Hi, this is Paul, and this is Rough Draft for Sunday, where I Let's keep the bloopers in, where I run through the current edition, version, status of my Sunday sermon. We've been in the Gospel of John. We had Nicodemus last week, John chapter 4. Now, Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now, why would this be? Why would he flee? He fled because he feared for his life. And it wasn't his time to end his ministry yet, and so he left. This gives us an idea of just how hot Jesus' culture war was. The fact that Jesus wasn't killed within weeks of a number of the things that we have seen him do, even just in the Gospel of John, cleansing the temple, is a miracle in and of itself. We wring our hands about how dangerous or consequential things are for us, but nothing like it was for Jesus. So he left Judea and went back at once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria, so he came to a town in Samaria named Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. Now, what kind of hero's journey is this? Jesus is tired, and his disciples, who have walked just as far as he has, they go into town for food. Jesus is tired. What does that mean? He was a man. He gets winded. There's no angelic Uber that can sort of wisp him straight from Judea to Galilee. Now, tensions between the Jews and who are the heirs of the southern kingdom of Judea and the Samaritans had gone on since for almost 700 years at this point, and it had regularly erupted in bloodshed. The Samaritans were the heirs of the people who were mixed in when the Assyrian kingdom came and destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel. And what the Assyrians did was sort of used a geographical, ethnic, cultural blender so that people wouldn't be able to easily organize and revolt against their empire. This is sort of a tyrannical multiculturalism. Now, the new people that came into the land, as would be true of often when new people would come, they ask about the gods of the area, and so they picked up the gods and the stories of the northern kingdom, at least part of them. And what happened with the Samaritans was that they adopted sort of an alternative origins myth with them at the center and with different holy places than you had down with Jerusalem. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, this was about noon again, Jesus said, "Will you give me something to drink? Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. Now, why is she not part of the Sychar Shadow Matriarchy? Women work together. They do so for community and for protection. And women in a community usually have a great degree of silent power. It's sometimes difficult for them to see. Is Jesus being a misogynist here? He's asking this woman for a drink of water. Is he crossing a line? Could this be understood as some kind of sexual come-on or some kind of violating a boundary? Camille Paglia is one of the people who have spoken about these old ways, old communities of women that had their own power. And in fact, I found it to be very true. Women in communities that I've known, even if they didn't hold a lot of status in institutions with titles that I've known, often held a tremendous amount of power. Grim Grizz calls this the Shadow Matriarchy. But this woman coming at noon all by herself, if you've ever carried water for all of your daily existence, and if you've ever lived in a warm climate, you know that noon is the last time of day you would do so, which means that this woman was likely exiled from the Shadow Matriarchy. She and the women of her town did not get along, for a variety of reasons, I'm sure. And so while all the other women probably came to the well early in the day to do what was needed, or perhaps late in the day, well, she came at noon. Why? What's her story? The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews did not associate with Samaritans. Again, did Jesus do something wrong? Could it have been conceived or construed as somehow inappropriate? This woman is, even though an exile of the Shadow Matriarchy, a veteran of the wars with the Shadow Matriarchy. She is no wilting wallflower. She knows her way around me, it should say men. It's nice to catch typos before Sunday. She's ready to wrestle with Jesus, like Jacob wrestled with God. Here doing so, like Jacob, who's can't get words out today. She's ready to wrestle with Jesus like Jacob, whose well they were drawing water from, wrestled with God. Maybe not the best constructed sentence ever, but you get the point. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the bounty of God and who it is that you asked for a drink, and who is it that has asked you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Now, usually verse 10 says the gift of God, but the word, I think gift in English is rather small compared to what I think was intended by this passage. The bounty of God. Gift is too small a word. If you trust in the generosity of the king, you ask for a kingly gift. And this living water, now the word play, basically in Greek, it's water of life, but that was vernacular for something with a stream. They're drawing water from something which is a little bit more like a cistern. And stream water is usually better than cistern water that sits around and things can fall into it. She's an exile from the Shadow Matriarchy, drinking cistern water, coming at noon by herself. She can't see that she stands before a king. She should ask for something immeasurably better than she can imagine. "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Now, this is a formidable woman. She may be shut out of the Shadow Matriarch of Sychar, but she's tough. And Jesus enjoys her strength. Jesus enjoys debating with her and bantering back and forth with her. She's standing up. She's wrestling with him in a certain way. Jesus makes strong people stronger. The fight between the Jews and the Samaritans was over who is the true heirs of Jacob and Abraham. Rootless people today care not about questions like this. Ancient people knew where they were going based on who they came from. And the tensions between Jews and Samaritans were very much over, are you a real son of Jacob? Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to the life of the age to come." Now, just talking with him, wrestling with him verbally, engaging him, is making her stronger. He's expanding her imagination from her cistern-fed, impoverished imagination she currently possesses. He's stretching her. He's growing her. You need to imagine a better world and seek it if you wish to receive it and to live in it. Lean into the bounty of the great King. Believe it. Stand up strong and start asking. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." Her imagination is still too small. This is sort of an easy askism. Okay, thirsty Jewish smarty pants, you've got my attention now. Put up or shut up. Show me this water, she basically says to him. Again, she's formidable. If ancient men like John were hopeless patriarchs, why would he write about such a woman? Well, I think she was real. She existed. This is a story. Even if you believe she was real, how could he see such a woman? Don't confuse me for a charlatan salesman of cheap, slothy hopes, Jesus will push back. He told her, go call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. Jesus said to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is that you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true. Oh, who is she talking to? Suddenly, the world changed. He knows why you've been exiled from the Shadow Matriarchy. You're a threat that had to be countered, and so you were exiled. You know your way around men, but you don't really know your way around yourself. You can't even know how to ask for that kingly gift unless you yourself undergo a transformation. But fear not, because the giver of world transformation can start that transformation in you too. She's getting warmer now, but she can't see the magnitude of what's coming yet. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Only a prophet? Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. Maybe a misdirection to the old fight. Woman, Jesus replied, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth. Jesus seldom speaks as directly as he does to this woman. The woman says, I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Samaritans believed this too. Then Jesus declared, I, the one who is speaking to you, I am he. Why be so direct in Samaria? They're already further from the truth than the people he's speaking with, which is probably why he can do it. This is the God that the Samaritans were seeking when they ginned up their Torah and constructed their own temples. This is the genuine article they've been trying to unsuccessfully clone. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking to a woman. See? There's sexual tension in this story. But no one asked because they're afraid. What do you want? Or why are you talking to her? Jesus, this isn't supposed to happen this way. Jesus, you know the rules. Christians don't like it when I point out the sexual tension in this story, but I think it's clearly there. We don't like thinking about Jesus as a sexual man. He was a human man. Of course he was sexual. Just because there was sexual tension, however, doesn't mean that Jesus said or did anything wrong. It's just there in the culture. Read Genesis type scenes if you want to understand this. How many patriarchs and their sons find women at the well? You look for your wife at the well. Jesus, in fact, will meet his bride there. What? What did you say, Pastor? Did you say Jesus will meet his bride there? Yes, he will. He will get it going right there. That's what this story is about. This is about Jesus meeting his bride. Is this woman his bride? Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" And they came out of the town and made their way towards him. Here comes the bride. How can a Samaritan village become the bride of Christ? That's what this whole story is about. Meanwhile, his disciples urged him, "Rabbi, eat something." And he said to them, "I have food to eat that you know nothing about." Now he's flirting with his disciples. Flirting? Flirting in a way. They'll be his bride too. They are just as clueless as the Samaritan woman, but a little more timid, not quite as feisty. They haven't been brought up in the Shadow Matriarchy. They're not ready to go toe-to-toe and wrestle with God. They should know better. Rabbi? Is that all he is? Prophet? Is that all he is? "I am he," he says to the woman. They'll learn, and they will see his kingdom come. They will be his bride. Jesus is sowing, and the disciples will reap. Then his disciples said to each other, "Could someone have brought him food?" "My food," said Jesus, "is to do the will of him who sent me, and to finish his work. Don't you have a saying, 'It's still 4 months until harvest'? I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields." Talking about food, talking about fields, talking to the strange woman. Jesus was all sorts of trouble to them. They are ripe for harvest. Even now, the one who reaps draws a wage and harvests a crop for eternal life. The disciples will be the bride, and they will also reap. And they will draw some reapings in a few minutes when the town gets there and invites them in for hospitality. So that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. That's exactly what's coming. Thus the saying, "One sows and another reaps," is true. I send you to reap what you have not worked for. Jesus just did all the work. The others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefit of their labor. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. "He told me everything I ever did." So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed for 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world." His disciples reap a harvest of hospitality from a village that was their enemy. A 700-year-old feud is resolved in one small space. It's the first fruit sightings of the greater harvest that is yet to come. Jesus' miracles are small samples of the life of the age to come. Where does Jesus find you? Divorced from the Shadow Matriarchy? Hardened by this world? Your imagination clipped by disappointment and suffering? Unwilling, unable to ask the King for the bounty, the size of his power? Maybe that's where you are. Maybe you need to grow up and strengthen up and see him face to face. For this exile of exiles, it was a bit of a revelatory banter that was sufficient to revive her wounded soul and rescue her town. This is to her credit. For the world, for history, for us all, the sacrifice needed to effect this far greater transformation would be done on a cross. If you knew the bounty of God, would you ask for a gift that honors the power of the King? You should. Don't fear wrestling with him. Oh, he's more than capable, and he welcomes your challenge. Don't doubt what he can accomplish through you, no matter your station or your past.